people. Now, when we teach learners, we are focusing with social beings, no, and we are also managing the teachers who are promoting that the teaching learning process. Now, take note that much of our task really entails being us as an instructional leader and a supervisor. So that is much of what we do as a school leader, right? And part of that is developing self and others and building connections. However, here, this is a very important domain to focus on. I'm sure, no, much of what will come out during the examination is all about how you should focus on teaching and learning. Okay, so we will start with the first strand. No, our first marathon of talk will be all about contextualization. So basically, the strand deals with school-based review, contextualization, and implementation of learning standards. Now, for us to understand this one, you should be aware, no, that even if there are standards in the curriculum, they are general enough for you to contextualize how you should implement it. And we'll be learning about that today using our first session entitled Contextualization. Again, this is under 3.1, School-Based Review, Contextualization, and Implementation of Learning Standards. Welcome, lifelong learners. Welcome to my channel, Learning with Doc Lebs, where we learn about research, education, technology, and the law. I am Doc Lebs. I am an educational leader, researcher, and law enthusiast. If you wish to grow as an educator, leader, researcher, and as a person, this channel is for you. Start your journey of lifelong learning by clicking subscribe, or if you like exclusive videos of my trainings and webinars in the international and national arena, click join for more specialized content. Remember, learning is fun and making it lifelong is key to a fulfilling life. Start now by clicking subscribe or join. Alright, so what is our objective for our first session? First is, at the end of the session, the participant shall explain the general process involved in contextualizing the curriculum and its implications for the teaching learning process. So basically, this is what we really want to do. Hopefully, we'll be able to explain the general process, no, and how we really contextualize the curriculum, the principles, and the implications, in how we should do the teaching learning process. And or in order for us to do this, let's first understand what are the key concepts of contextualization, right? And the process that you need to do in order to contextualize the curriculum. And of course, you need to practice the method of assessing contextualized competency. So a particular competency can actually be contextualized, and we're going to learn how to do that. Okay, so for instance, okay, so if we do this groups, no, but we don't need to do that anymore. But when we look at this one, competency, the competency here is sexuality as an important component of one's personality, right? So this involves a lot of questions like what are the practices or conditions in the community can the competency be related to? So if you have a competency like sexuality as an important component of one's personality, then you need to understand it's talking about sexuality, no, and how it is important in one's personality. Then you need to understand what are the practices in the community that the competency can be related. Because when you contextualize, you wanted it to be something that is relatable to the learners. They saying, sir, we have stopped doing this because we are already in the modular aspect of the modality that we're delivering to the learners. That's a very wrong conception. Okay, that's a very wrong concept to really argue with, because in the first place, even if we are employing modular approach, the more that we need to contextualize, no, because remember, there is a higher level of disengagement right now because of our situation, and our learners are actually disengaged in a sense, because even us could not read, no, a lot of papers, and imagine our learners are reading a lot of modules right now. And I'm really happy that here in Cebu we are now already at alert level 2. We can now implement limited face to face, and hopefully in your areas there are also limited face to face already going on. Okay, so this is human interaction is very important in the teaching learning process, and the more you have this little engagement, the more you need to make sure that there is a level of engagement among your learners. And one way to do that is through contextualization. So you need to ask that question. Now, what teaching strategy will be most effective for this competency? So how do you teach it in such a way that will allow your learners to learn it more effectively, right? So that's the next question you need to ask. Then what learning resources are available for the teachers to use? Now, the competency is about sexuality. And how do you go about doing this? What are the learning resources available? And that's where localization will come in. Remember, localization later on will be defined, and you will understand that the localization is actually part of contextualization. There are two kinds of that, no, and that includes localization. So you look at the learning resources that are available. Schools have different contexts, different situations. Some are located in a far-flung area, some are located near the city, and each of it is located in a community with a different kind of culture, different kinds of species or trees, different kind of geographical context, and different kind of physical properties. No, when you look at the community, there is a difference in each of the area that we have. So if you maximize those resources that are available near to your area, then that is a form of localization. So you need to understand that. You need to ask that question. Then you can also ask how well the students' learning be measured. So in this case, you look at how you should be measuring how they learn, right? We don't have a one-stop shop of really measuring learning, because learning could be something different. No, it is something that may change from situation to situation basis. No, it's a case to case basis. So part of contextualization is also looking at that aspect, right? So what were your considerations in answering number 1 and 4? No, and what are these? Why are these your considerations? So think about that. What do you consider? No, what were your considerations? So I think I mentioned that a while ago, that you need to consider the environment, the culture of the people, the physical attributes of where you are teaching it, what are readily available. No, in our areas here in Cebu, we have a lot of delicacies. Right? If you go to Karkar, you will hear about ampao. You will hear about lechon. No, if you go to Talisa, it's same lechon. If you come here in Naga Cebu, you will hear about I won't say it, pero it's a little bit funny because we don't really have anything, no delicacies, but we are known to be Naga is known to be a place for mystics, no? So so just like Sikihor is also a place of mystics, right? Maybe there's a history on that because the city of Naga came from the word Nara, no? It was said that there are many trees here before. So what I'm saying is that every place is known for something. So that includes objects, delicacies, wherein people in that community might easily relate. So these are your major considerations in doing contextualization. So you keep thinking of that. I want you to start thinking about your school location. Where are you located and what are the interesting attributes found in your locality? If it's not something physical, then you are localizing. If it's something physical, you are in a sense localizing. But if you are talking about the culture, the way you do things, the way the attributes of the people that are there, then perhaps you are talking about indigenization. So that is a form of that is still a form of contextualization. So, what is the basis for this? No, why do we need to contextualize? And why do we keep on hearing the word contextualization? Well, according to the Governance of Basic Education Act of 2001, RA 9155, no, Section 2. By the way, no, this Republic Act will never go away from all principles test examination. So, might as well take note of this. You need to read Republic Act 9155 from start to finish. That is our the foundation of our authority as a principal. No, we are actually you have actually have higher position than me. You are the little superintendents of the division office. No, you have a sense of independence. No, and that's why people in your school respect you. No, And before we go to your schools, even we need to talk and communicate with you. Although the assistant superintendent is the rater of all school heads, no, he is the person who will empower the school heads in their respective schools. Under Section 2, it states encourage local initiatives for improving the quality of basic education. So that is a mandate of law. So we wanted you to create your local initiatives. Well, the Department of Education and our lawmakers, no, recognizes that there is no one stop shop for learning. No, learning is not something that is applicable to all kinds of people. No, it's not a rigid practice. It is a practice that is based on people. It takes two to tango. No, it's like a dance. In order for the teacher and the learner to learn, they need to be sync to each other. And this syncing requires them to look at their current situation and trying to look at what is the best way for them to learn something and to realize something out from the instruction. So basically, that is what I keep on repeating. We need to encourage local initiatives. The values, needs, and aspirations of a school community are reflected in the program of education. So whatever it is that are valued in the community, the needs, the aspirations, that whatever it is that is close to your heart, that's why you call it values because it's important to you. Your needs, of course. Everyone is very concerned with food. Everyone is concerned with our needs, no, food, shelter. These are things that are present in our everyday life. No, that's the reason why people flock during fiesta because there's food. No, it's a basic need. It's something that serves as the interest of many people. Aspirations, your dreams. What do you want to become? What are the aspirations of that community? And what are their cultures? Though these things are very close to the person's heart. So if that is integrated with education, then education becomes something very very important and relevant for that person. So it's up to the teachers, the school to really try to integrate all these things in order for us to have a more meaningful learning experience. The school and learning center shall be empowered to make decision on what is best for the learners they serve. Okay? So this is actually one of the most important things that school heads should know, that you have the power to make decisions on what is best for the learners they serve. However, remember, even if you are empowered to do it, you are you should act, no, within the bounds of the law. No, I've seen school heads sometimes uh, being too aggressive, no, too aggressive sometimes. Yes, I may say initiative is good, but do not act out of ignorance of the law because that will not excuse you. Okay? Remember, ignorance of the law excuses no one. So if you will say later on, if you do acts like it's violative of the laws of the land, and you will be violating a lot of things in the act of, in the guise of saying that you are empowered to make decisions, then that will not serve as your defense when you say you don't really know the laws. For instance, how we deal with money is guided, no, even if it doesn't came from this division office. All the expenses that we will be having should be governed by Republic Act 9184, no, the procurement law, because that is considered government funds. All the donations given to us by the government and by the private sector and our stakeholders is considered public funds. No, it's not the funds of the school head. No, even if it doesn't came from the MOE. Remember, all the donations given to us are not your personal funds. As such, because they are public funds, they are subject to Republic Act 9184, wherein it's also, I think you have from Dr. Nanding, he said this is your last, no, domain that you need to discuss. But according to fiscal management, that's also one very important thing. I've heard about a school head. No, according to jurisprudence, there was a school head who was given this money from a drugstore for them to rent a part of their school. That alone is already wrong. No, you're not allowed to rent a part of your school to anyone. Okay, and then that money was used to buy TV sets, and materials for the classroom. You know what happened? He was still put into jail because that money did not undergo the necessary procurement stipulated in RA 9184. So just be careful because their defense there was that they said that they are mere no human beings. They don't really know the law, and that excuse was not entertained by the court because ignorance of the law excuses no one. So just be careful. No? Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, no, that's 10533. Remember that that is the law that established the K to 12 curriculum. So the DepEd should adhere to the following standards and principles in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum. So first is contextualized, and it should be contextualized and global. So it's in letter D, no, of that in terms of standards and principles. The DepEd shall adhere to the following standards and principles in developing the enhanced basic education curriculum. It should be flexible enough to enable and allow schools to localize, indigenize, and enhance the same based on the respective educational and social context. No? So remember, contextualization is the responsibility of the school. It's not mandated by me, by Doc Nanding, or by your superintendent or by your assistant superintendent. It is the law that mandates that. No? Two laws that we have encountered. No? Republic Act 10533, Republic Act 9155. And remember, these are laws and everyone is bound to follow this one. Okay? It should be flexible enough to allow schools to localize, indigenize. Please take note of that. Okay, so therefore, these are our policy basis or the legal basis of contextualization. So we we look at the highlights of the local level. We try to see it. What are the things you think can our learners relate to, no, in terms of our culture, of our setting, and then we try to understand the local context. So the K to 12 curriculum has a particular setting, no, and then situation, area of application. Then we wanted it to become meaningful, relevant, and useful. Now, if you really describe these words, the bottom line is we want our curriculum to be relatable to our learners. We just wanted them to learn. No, we wanted them to say that, oh my God, I can relate to this instruction. I understand basically why our teacher is really pursuing us to learn this one. And much more than that, here in the midst of the pandemic right now, we can say, no, that there is also a decongestion of our competencies. So we already have the milk, no? The most essential competencies are the ones that we are already using. So if we are already using the milks, it means that we have more time to do the contextualization, because before, during our time, when I was a teacher, as much as I wanted to really do the contextualization, have activities wherein they can relate, but sometimes I run out of time in doing it. No, because there are a lot of competencies that are uh, sometimes they are repetitive and they are too long, no, for us to deliver, especially in the science subject. So we have more leeway now. It's just that it's harder now because of the pandemic. But basically, we are now more in the position to actually apply contextualization. So, okay, so we weave together the national competencies and the learner's community realities and knowledge, leading to the relevant and meaningful lesson. So we have here community knowledge, whatever is in there in the community, then we weave them together. You see a basket, no? We put them together. The national competencies are general enough, really, honestly, to be able to allow us to contextualize. That's why if you look at it, competencies, by the way, are a specific set of skills that you need to employ. So these are skills that have a sense of measurement to how we do it. Then we merge it, we weave it together with the community knowledge and situation. Then we are already contextualizing, doing the act of contextualizing. So how do you define contextualization? I've been talking about this, so let's define it clearly. Refers to the educational process of relating the curriculum to a particular setting, situation, or area of application to make the competencies relevant, meaningful, and useful to all learners. So let's look at the keywords. No, it requires to an educational process. So this is part of education. Wherein the curriculum, no, we try to relate it to a specific setting or situation or area of application to make the competencies. Take note of this. This is how we transform it. We want it to become relevant, something meaningful for our learners, something useful to the community. So remember there's an assessment aspect in contextualizing. Let's say for example, no, just to give you an idea, because I almost became no the TLE supervisor. So in Naga. However, I was transferred to I became the OIC supervisor for the SGOD. So I was more on the learning environment. But I happened to start analyzing how we should improve TLE education in the midst of the pandemic, because that was on the time wherein the pandemic was starting. One of the main ideas that came out of my thought experiments was to look for authentic assessment, no, in delivering that kind of instruction for TLE. For instance, go for authentic assessment, wherein if let's say for example it's carpentry and the learners are not allowed to go to school, so therefore you may ask the child to create a chair, no, and maybe sell it perhaps in their own homes or in their community. You see, this is a form of authentic assessment. No? You can ask the customers to assess or the customers of that child. Let's say, for example, how was the chair being created, and if the child is also working at the same time, for example, as a person assisting in construction work, maybe perhaps you can just look for their output in those areas. So in a sense, there is a sense of contribution, no, to the community, because they are doing their part in serving the community. At the same time, you are making it as a gauge to the competencies and skills that they are learning. Remember, TLE is more of technology and livelihood education. So therefore, if you apply all this learning in a community, in a sense, like they need to conduct research and campaign to the community. Let's say, for example, you're a science teacher, you wanted them to campaign in the community using a video or a short Facebook post, but you need to make sure, you know, that child or that person has you need to check if that person really has a Facebook account, or is that person having all the necessary connection for them to do that project. Or they can do a campaign or a poster, they can lay out a poster in the community that promotes good health habits. Okay, so all these things is a form of contextualization. Okay, you are making the instruction more relevant, more meaningful for the learners. Okay, so there are two, we call this degrees of contextualization. Usually, the lower degree deals with localization, refers to the process of relating learning content specified in the curriculum to local information and materials in the learner's community. So, take note, when you localize, you just look at the locality. What are the information and materials available? Physical materials. Or let's say, for example, local information. Then you use this in your instruction or make it something relatable to them. A lot of your teachers are actually doing this. No, when they talk and try to relate it to their daily lives or to the things that they see in their community. Oh, this building here, no, this the tree that we see outside our classroom. These are forms of localization. And if this serves the purpose of making instruction more relevant, more meaningful, more easier to understand for our learners, then in a sense you are doing localization already. No, you are doing this, but sometimes it's not really documented. No, um, but these are leverage points our teachers are always applying every now and then. The contextualization is something that is hopefully can be documented, because MOV based, as government officials, we are bounded by SPSS, no, the Strategic Performance Management System, or for us it's commonly called the RPMS. So we need MOVs to do that. But every now and then we always do contextualization a lot, especially for our teachers. Then we also have indigenization. So this is the higher degree of contextualization that refers to the process of enhancing curriculum competencies, education resources, and teaching learning process. No, take note of that, huh? we look at curriculum competencies, education resources, and teaching learning process in relation to the geographical, historical, socio-cultural context of the learners and community. It's the higher level because the assumption here is we wanted to say that a learner will relate much more deeper to that instruction when it is very close to their culture, no, to their history, to their social cultural context. But I would like to argue also, no, that our learners, some especially in high school, these are teenage people. So you need to. We have a session later on about understanding their situation. In a sense, let's also look at the rebellious side of our learners. Most of them are they could even be called antisocial sometimes. No, they wanted to go against the trend of the society. But the thing is, the teens themselves have their specific culture, their socio-cultural context in a sense. So you should be able to, because my fears on this is sometimes when school heads and teachers interpret this, even our DepEd leaders will include them, because sometimes they have this very common misconception that they will say, that's indigenization, so it's only applicable to indigenized groups. No, 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 actually. If you look at indigenization, it requires you to look at the culture of that person that you're teaching with. So that's the reason why when I was a principal, I noticed that the teachers, especially the boys, don't come back, no, after 12 o'clock. So I tried to understand what is happening. No, then I discovered that they are playing Mobile Legends, and because Mobile Legends is a very engaging game compared to the games or to the lecture of the teacher, then they don't go back after 12 o'clock. So what do I need to do? I need to understand, no, their social cultural context. I need to go with them, talk to them, make them my friends, and at the same time, without making no without at the same time setting boundaries. No, I happen to play with them, no, so that I can make sure that they always go back at 1 o'clock. So that's how I ended up learning how to play Mobile Legends. So in that sense, we are looking at ways, no, to help understand their situation. If you are their teacher, then perhaps you can look at their interests. Why is it that they love playing Mobile Legends, and why is it that our learners are very much engaged on that kind of activity? No? So in a sense, there is a level of being sensitive. No, there's a sense of sensitivity, and that is exactly what we wanted to cultivate to our K to 12 teachers, because we are K to 12. We have K to 12 teachers and we have K to 12 leaders. Okay, so this is what is happening in localization. No, whatever is the learning content, of course, you add that with learn local information. Then you can add local materials. Then you are already doing localization. Okay, examples of that is in examples used in lessons start with those in locality, like you name settings, situations to give context to test questions or problem solving exercises are those of the immediate community. So the part of the teachers did this is how they do it. Local materials are used as often as possible in making instructional materials so that the learners can relate. Local stories, like stories in the community, no, then use the language in used in the language learning areas. Then translating a story written in a language to the language of one's learners to use in MTB MLE. That indigenization, no, you look at the curriculum framework, curriculum design, learning standard, teaching learning processes, learning resources. Then all these things we try to relate it with our biogeographical, historical, and social cultural situation. Okay, so in indigenization, uh, there is biogeography, uh, history, sociocultural dimension. So this one for localization, only local information or local material. So it's in a sense it is more lower in terms of degree. Okay, right. So contextualize curriculum. So there are learning spaces. We can contextualize that. How do we change our environment in order for them to learn? Teaching methodologies, no classroom assessment. We can I mentioned that we can contextualize that. Uh, some of our people in DepEd might misinterpret sometimes that contextualized curriculum is just a very rigid concept. But I tell you, it's applicable to how you teach, how you assess, and the environment by which you let your learners learn. Okay, and even our learning resources. Okay, so in localization, use local materials. That example, fruits in a season like watermelon or local kakanin to visualize fractions. Then community culture practices that involve fractions are used to visualize fractions. So in this way, you are already doing indigenization because you are integrating cultural practice. Okay, so this one, identify star patterns that can be seen at particular times of the year. So use the community's name for prominent stars if they are. My reservation to this is what if the learners do not even know. No, so while retaining the use of Greek constellations and its background on discussing star patterns. However, take note na the thing here is you want it to be relevant. So if it's something that is not relatable to your learners, then don't actually include that. Okay, discuss the community's own calendar of star patterns and its background before discussing the Greek constellations. Okay, so if there is a community calendar in the community. Okay, so more examples are written here. In Tagalog, nagtatalakay ng mahalagang pangyayari sa pananakop ng mga Hapones. Okay, sa paggamit ng mga larawan, bagay na may kinalaman sa panahon ng pananakop ng Hapones, or if there are ancient stories no of in their areas about the colonization of the Japanese people, no? And then indigenization, may isalaysay ang sitwasyon o pangyayari sa sariling pamilya noong pananakop. So it's higher already because it's a story, it's a known story, no? In localization, you only utilize the picture, no, something physical, something that is seen in the community. If there's a canon left there by the Japanese Filipino War, or but in indigenization, you deal with common practices, cultural practices. Now, how do we contextualize? We have a contextualized matrix that you can use. If you wanted your people to really do it, and then you wanted it to be implemented in your school, then you can do this one. Like in kinder, tiwala sa sarili. Then you have the curriculum guide code, then the national competency. Then you try to contextualize it. An example is na ipapakita ang tiwala sa sarili na tugunan ang sariling pangangailangan ng mag-isa. So independence din siya. However, if you look at the contextualize, like it's more specific. Paggamit ng maayos ng mga kagamitan sa pagkain tulad ng baso, kutsara, tinidor at pinggan. For you, this is more relevant in their current situation. As you can see, the national competency is general enough. So you can have contextualized strategies in doing it. So you can contextualize the competency. You can contextualize strategies or games that you can do, simulation game during eating time blocks. Then you can also contextualize the assessment. So this is a suggested contextualized matrix that you can employ. Okay, so you can use this one if you like. Okay. Okay. So I'm also inviting to subscribe to my channel Learning with Doc Levs. I'll be sharing this PowerPoint presentation there. All right. Okay. So contextualization is for all ethnic groups and socio-cultural contexts in the country, not just indigenous communities. Okay, so take note of that, ha. I've mentioned that a while ago. Very common misconception. Contextualization is for all ethnic groups and social cultural context, not just for indigenous communities, because a lot of them would say nga, we don't have ethnic groups here. We don't have indigenous people here. So might as well as the contextualization is not for us. They keep on telling us that. Now, take note that contextualization is very important for indigenous people. Why? Because they are considered lardos already by the fact that they are belonging to an indigenous group, and they are protected by the government in a sense, but they have a very unique culture and they are our ancestors. And because of that, there is sometimes a gap between our culture and their culture. And considering that they are most likely to drop out. That's why there's a need for us to really contextualize deeper our instruction so that they will be helped, so that we can put them and make them stay in schools. But to tell you, contextualization is not limited to that. The more you observe that your learners are not very much engaged to learning, then the more you need to do contextualization. Okay, so take note of that. So, context of the discussion as school head. So, what changes in perspective are necessary to that contextualization will be effective? So, you try to discuss that in your brain, huh? Now, you try to ask that question. What changes in perspective? No, I hope, no, in our discussion you have realized a lot of things. I'm sure you have heard about contextualization. So, what is now the paradigm shift that is happening in your brain? No, how should we you view contextualization? Is contextualization more important now in the context of the pandemic? How should you do it? No, is it merely in the act of doing your modules, or there is hope because we will be doing limited face to face? Now, if you say limited face to face, it is a blended type of modality. So there are times that they are there in the school, then times wherein they will be doing independent learning. So how do you contextualize it? How do you make sure, no, that when they come to the school, you make it relevant, very relatable? The instruction is, how do you empower your teachers to do that? Okay, later on we'll talk about lock sessions, how you can do lock sessions as an instructional leader. You see, the work of a school head is really very difficult. No, you this is only one aspect of that. You need to continuously think of how you should engage our learners. I had this experience before. No, I was a school head in my first year in that school. In the first time that I went there, I tell you, there was no physical improvement in that school. No, no, as in zero physical improvement. You know why? Because in the first, no, I wanted to focus in the classroom. I wanted to focus on the instruction. What I did in the first year was to make sure that I observe classes, and I make sure that I teach them how to properly teach the learners. And most of all, I make sure that all of them will have the classes that they deserve, because during that time I noticed that the teachers are not really spending the whole hour. No, they just they come in late. No, they sometimes they don't even teach properly. So what I did was to, I even became the demonstration teacher, just to start, no, the flow of teaching. So the supervisor, when they went there, they said, yeah, how come you're already 1 year here, there's no physical improvement? No, in outside the classroom, but inside the classroom it's already very much organized. Okay, because most of the supervisors will look for plans. No, but remember, your schools are not beach resorts. You are not you are not a resort expert. But the thing is, as a school leader, no, you need also to focus on that, because you wanted to make school something very a nice place to be with. Okay, but during that time I focused on instruction first, and after that I went outside, and the moment there was a fence already, that school became already the best secondary school in the whole of the division. Okay, it is the only school with full CCTV cameras inside and outside the classrooms, the school with the only school with operating um, sound system, no, centralized sound system for announcements, and it was the best in Gulayan sa Paralan school, no, together with its award as best secondary school. So that was achieved after 3 years, no. So the thing is, all those all those things you cannot do it in one day, even in 1 year. No, you need to prioritize. And remember that as instructional leader, you need to realize that you are a person. No, as the principal, you are the person who is there to empower them to know how to teach. Even if I was the school head, I was never afraid to do a demonstration. No, I showed them games that they can use to engage the learners. I'm not angry if the learners are playing, as long as they don't disturb the other class. So I ask them to stay in the grounds. Those are things that you can do as a school leader. No, to make the instruction relevant, to make the instruction meaningful for your learners. Learners today love to play games. They love to enjoy They want to gamify things. They want competition. They want recognition. And there are boys, there are girls. So you need to make sure that you are sensitive to the needs of the male learners, the female learners. So what will be some necessary activities in the school so teachers can effectively contextualize their lessons? Now, you will be champions of contextualization after this. So how would you do it? What additional linkages, partnerships will be necessary to support curriculum and contextualization? How should you coordinate with the community? Given the activities of school and with others to support contextualization, what need to be done to sustain efforts related to contextualization? How do you sustain this? No? Then what mechanisms and processes in depth ed need to be aligned so that the curriculum contextualization is effectively supported? As a school head, very important question. How would you introduce to your school the process of contextualization? That's a question that you need to ask. Okay, you wanted to become a principal, pure-blooded principal item, no? Holder. Okay? And ako dyan keep on repeating this. The only way to become a real principal is to pretend to become one. Okay? The best way to learn the craft of being a principal is to practice it. Okay? So you practice it in your work, you learn about all these things and you teach and empower your teachers in order for them to become champions of contextualization. Okay, so schools will need to have a continuing dialogue with the community. That's important to note. Teachers will need to be immersed in the community of the learners. Teachers should be able to see what are the culture of the people you are teaching the instruction with. Okay, uh, I've heard about teachers, no, looking at the latest trends in how learners speak. I remember when I was a teacher, I don't honestly no, I don't. Just a small sharing. No, I started as a teacher in a science high school, but it's good to make friends with your fellow teachers, but sometimes it's very hard. No, dealing with, especially in the public school system, you will be tested by fire. Okay, so there are times that you will become overwhelmed by you thought you were friends and then etc. All those petty things, no, that happens in a school, no, with teachers sometimes. So just make sure, no, in a sense, na it's better to really spend time with your learners. I usually do that. When I became an advisor, I don't usually go out. So they call me the teacher monk. But I don't care, no. If they talk about me, then I just stay in my classroom. I just teach, no. I just teach because that is my job. It's not my job to really, unless there's a lock session. Okay, it's more productive to really be immersed with the culture, the community of the learners that you have. You try to understand the way they interact, what are the things that are trending to them. No, you listen to their interaction, what makes them laugh, what makes them happy. So all those things, no, teacher should be like that. No, should be sensitive, should have an eye for sensitivity to what will click to your learners. Then if you can do more than that, of course you cannot actually stay in the community and on. But just be observant. This is the community that we have. What culture do we have? But of course, you need to start with the culture of your learners, because teenagers or our learners are also at the same time growing, no, growing individuals. They create their own culture, no, as teens, as learners, as students, as pupils. So try to observe that carefully. So the community is integral to curriculum contextualization. Community partnership is now in the heart of education, the curriculum itself. So you need to involve the community, the parents, and just make them feel. No, it's so easy to really encourage community to join with you. First is do not show them any even a little show of corruption. Okay, if they feel that the money that is given to the school is not utilized properly, they will disengage. Okay, but to tell you honestly, people will always give their best for the school if they see that the principal is really very transparent, a person of integrity, a person is willing to sacrifice for the learners, and you just wanted to ask their help. you just be transparent and they will come to you. Okay? So for your context allies, no, with the same community group, assess the contextualized competency using the given template. So this is an example. You can do that. No, you can create contextualized strategy. I've already shared this one to you. So you can contextualize the competency. You can contextualize the strategy and attack for them to learn that. Then you can also contextualize your assessment to make it very meaningful. Right? So I hope you have learned something from that. Okay, at this point, thank you so much for listening. That's the first, no, out of the many sessions that we'll be having. Welcome, lifelong learners. Welcome to my channel, Learning with Doc Lebs, where we learn about research, education, technology, and the law. I am Doc Lebs. I am an educational leader, researcher, and law enthusiast. If you wish to grow as an educator, leader, researcher, and as a person, this channel is for you. Start your journey of lifelong learning by clicking subscribe, or if you like exclusive videos of my trainings and webinars in the international and national arena, click join for more specialized content. Remember, learning is fun and making it lifelong is key to a fulfilling life. Start now by clicking subscribe or join.